The air was thick with humidity as Claire Duval stepped out of Hussein Sastranegara International Airport in Bandung. The buzz of motorbikes, street vendors shouting, and horns blaring all at once made her flinch slightly. This was far from the polished stone floors and champagne lounges of Paris. She adjusted her sunglasses and exhaled slowly. She wasn't here to explore culture. She wasn't here for love either. She was escaping. Her father, Nicholas Duval, CEO of Duval International Properties, had insisted she come to Bandung to oversee a resort project in Lembang. A convenient excuse to push her away from Pierre, the man she was supposed to marry but couldn't even stand to be near anymore. He was rich, powerful, and soulless. Just like the life Claire had grown tired of pretending to enjoy. "Miss Claire, the car is ready," said a smiling man in batik. She simply nodded, heels clicking as she walked through the heat haze. On the ride through the congested streets, she stared blankly out the window. Poverty pressed itself against the glass, children playing barefoot, vendors selling fried bananas, women holding umbrellas beneath faded billboards. She was a stranger in a strange world, but something about it didn't repel her. Not yet. The next morning, Claire decided to visit the resort construction site. The hotel driver hadn't arrived yet, so she ordered a ride via a local app. When a motorbike pulled up with a lanky young man in a faded jacket and a scratched helmet, she almost laughed. "You're Claire?" the rider asked, voice soft, polite. She hesitated. "Yes. You are." "Aldi." He smiled. "Let's go. I'll drive carefully." Carefully was a stretch. The potholes, the weaving traffic, the unpredictable weather, Claire was terrified. But somehow, in the chaos, she found herself holding her breath less, and breathing more. As they splashed through a muddy alley, a puddle soaked her white pants. "Ah, sorry, miss. Couldn't avoid that one," Aldi said, glancing back nervously. Claire groaned. "If you want, you can stop by my bike wash after the site visit. I'll clean it for free. One-time offer for foreigners," he added with a grin. She didn't respond. But she also didn't forget. That evening, after returning from the project site, Claire stood on her hotel balcony as rain softly fell over Bandung. She thought about the muddy streets, the smell of fried tofu, and Aldi's awkward but genuine smile. It wasn't attraction. It was something else. A sense of reality. Of raw, unfiltered existence. The next afternoon, rain came again. Claire, dressed casually for once, decided to walk. She passed by the same small alley from yesterday. There, under a blue tarpaulin, buckets and hoses scattered around, stood Aldi, spraying down a motorbike. She stopped. He noticed her, turned off the hose, and approached with a rag in his hands. "Miss Claire. Visiting the slums?" he teased, but respectfully. She raised a brow. "I was just passing by." The shop next to his wash stall, a warung with cracked tiles and a warm smell of boiling tea, invited her in with a middle-aged woman waving her over. Claire hesitated, then entered. "I have ginger tea if you're cold," the woman offered kindly. Claire sat on a plastic chair. "No, thank you." But her lips curled into a faint smile. Aldi sat across from her. "People like you don't usually stop here." "No offense." "I don't like lying," Claire replied. "And I hate pretending." He tilted his head. "Then you'll like it here. We don't wear masks. We don't need to." As the rain got heavier, Claire shivered slightly. Aldi stood up and handed her a thin jacket, faded green, a little torn. She hesitated, then accepted it. "Thanks." "No problem," he said. "Better a dirty jacket than a cold flu." Claire looked at his hands, cracked from soap, nails darkened from labor. "Do you work here all day?" "Mostly. I dropped out of university when my mother got sick. I had to support the family." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "That's rare in my world." Aldi smiled. "We don't have much. But we have peace." Claire stared at him. "Do you believe in God?" Aldi looked surprised. "Of course. I'm Muslim." She nodded slowly. I don't know much about Islam. No problem, he said calmly. It's not something you're forced into. It's something that calls to your heart. Claire leaned back. What if I want to understand it? Not convert. Just understand. Aldi's eyes softened. Then I'll bring you something to read. English Qur'an. I still have my translation copy. You're welcome to it. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed, flipping through pages on her phone about Islam. Not political headlines. Not controversies. Just basics. Why Muslims pray 5 times a day. What tawakkul means. What halal really is. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel judged. Or hollow. She felt curious. Alive. The next morning, Claire walked down to the hotel lobby wearing loose jeans, sneakers, and a simple cream blouse. Her heels were gone. Her earrings too. She looked less like a CEO's daughter and more like someone discovering freedom. In her tote bag, she carried nothing but a notebook, her phone, and curiosity. When she reached the small alley again, the motorbike wash was already busy. 2 customers waited their turn, chatting in Sundanese. Aldi stood with a hose in one hand and a wide smile on his face as he saw Claire approach. You came back, he said with a light grin. You said you'd lend me the Qur'an, she replied. He nodded. Wait here. From the wooden crate under a stool, he pulled out a wrapped paperback book with gold-embossed Arabic and English text. It's an old one. But the translation is good. Claire took it with both hands, instinctively treating it with care. What's the first thing I should read? Aldi thought for a moment, wiping his damp hands on his pants. Maybe start with Surah Al-Fatiha. It's the opening. We recite it every prayer. Claire raised an eyebrow. What does it mean? He smiled. It's a prayer to the Creator, asking Him to guide us to the straight path. That's it. Pure and simple. She nodded. That sounds beautiful. It is, he said softly. Not everything in life needs to be complicated. Claire didn't rush to read the whole book. That night she sat on the floor of her hotel room with the Qur'an open beside her. Her fingers traced the English words under the Arabic. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. She reread those lines again and again. There was something soothing in the rhythm. Something unfamiliar, but not threatening. Then she flipped to a random page. Her eyes landed on. And we have certainly created man in hardship. Surah Al-Balad, 90:4. Claire blinked. She whispered it again, as if testing its truth. The following day, Aldi and Claire sat outside the warren again, sipping sweet tea. Claire placed the Qur'an gently beside her on the bench. I read some verses, she began, looking thoughtful. It doesn't feel forceful. That's the thing, Aldi said. Faith is not supposed to be forced. Even in our religion, the Qur'an says there is no compulsion in religion. Claire nodded slowly. I grew up Catholic. But it always felt ceremonial. I never felt God listening. And now? He asked. She looked at him. Now I feel like I've been asking the wrong questions my whole life. Later that week, Claire asked Aldi if she could visit a masjid. I want to see what prayer looks like, she explained. Not on YouTube. Real. Aldi hesitated, then nodded. I'll take you. But we won't go to a big mosque where people stare. There's a quiet one nearby. My friend is the caretaker. Very humble. That afternoon, Aldi lent her a light pastel scarf. Just cover your hair inside. It's respectful. Claire hesitated in front of the mirror. She had worn scarves before, silk ones, stylish ones, but this felt different. She wasn't covering for fashion. She was covering for respect. For reverence. As they entered the quiet masjid, Claire felt a stillness settle over her chest. The carpet was soft. The light filtered through green glass windows. And the air smelled faintly of jasmine and clean stone. In one corner, an elderly man was making sujud, forehead touching the floor, unmoving. Claire stood silently, watching. What's he doing? she whispered. Talking to Allah, Aldi whispered back. With his heart. She didn't speak for a long time. That night, back at her hotel, Claire opened the Qur'an again. This time, she searched for specific words. Mercy, peace, purpose. Each verse felt like a whisper into her confusion. She no longer felt like she was reading a book. It felt more like the book was reading her. A few days later, while sitting by the motorbike wash again, Claire asked, Aldi, how do you know if Islam is the truth? Aldi looked at her, surprised. That's a heavy question for someone who came here just to build a resort. Claire gave a half laugh. I didn't come here for Islam. But Islam is what I found. He leaned forward. You know, when I was younger, I used to ask the same thing. I'd read books, watch debates, talk to ustads. But in the end, it wasn't logic that convinced me. What was it then? He smiled gently. Peace. The kind you don't find in money, fame, or even love. It comes only when you say, Ya Allah, I surrender. Guide me. Claire's eyes welled up slightly. And if someone like me, foreign, broken, unsure, says those words? Then Allah opens the door. Aldi said softly. Even if the whole world closes theirs. That night, Claire didn't cry. She didn't overthink. She simply sat at the edge of her bed, placed her palm on the Qur'an, and whispered, Guide me. If you're real, if you're there, guide me. Claire didn't tell anyone, not even Aldi, about her whispered prayer that night. It was between her and the God she wasn't even sure she fully believed in yet. But something had shifted. Subtly, quietly, like the way rain starts with only one drop on the window. Over the next few days, she continued reading the Qur'an, this time slower. She asked questions, sometimes in the middle of a normal conversation. What does sabr really mean? Why do Muslims wash before praying? Why do you touch the ground with your forehead? Aldi answered each question patiently, never rushing, never preaching. He didn't try to convert her. He simply spoke like a man who knew his faith wasn't something to be sold, it was something to be lived. One afternoon, Claire found herself waiting near the masjid again. The caretaker had invited her to observe the Dur prayer. She sat quietly in the women's area, scarf on, back straight, watching the small group line up on soft rugs. The imam's voice was gentle, echoing against the walls. His words in Arabic washed over her, foreign and flowing, yet not empty. As they all bowed and then prostrated, Claire's eyes stung. These strangers weren't just going through motions. They were surrendering. Entirely. Physically lowering themselves in a world that always told people to stand taller, to dominate. She whispered under her breath, more to herself than anyone. I've never bowed to anything in my life. But deep inside, her heart was already bending. Later that day, Claire sat beside Aldi in the quiet back corner of Waronyani. They were sharing a plate of fried tempeh and sweet iced tea. The Qur'an lay between them like a bridge. I want to tell you something, Claire said, her voice low. Aldi paused. Okay. I've been reading more. And thinking. A lot. He nodded. I figured. You've been quieter. She took a deep breath. I think I believe in God. And I believe the Qur'an is not just a book. It feels like a letter I was always meant to open. Aldi's eyes widened, but he said nothing. I'm not saying this because of you, she added quickly. I mean, yes, you helped. You're the first person who didn't make me feel stupid for asking spiritual questions. But this, what I'm feeling now, it's mine. He lowered his gaze for a moment, humbled. Claire, you don't have to explain. I do, she said. Because I want to know what comes next. Aldi looked at her, then gently said, Then maybe, the next step is you talk to Allah directly. The next day, Aldi introduced her to Ustaz Malik, a soft-spoken imam who worked in a small Islamic center nearby. They met in a quiet corner of the masjid after Asr prayer. Claire wore a long-sleeved dress, scarf neatly pinned. Her nervous fingers clutched her notebook like armor. Ustaz Malik greeted her warmly. You've already started the journey, he said. Now you just have to let your heart finish it. Claire asked him dozens of questions. About God's mercy. About heaven and hell. About the role of women. About prayer. About Jesus. And she listened. Carefully. Respectfully. When Ustaz Malik explained how Islam sees Jesus, peace be upon him, not as God, but as a beloved prophet, Claire didn't argue. She simply whispered, "That makes more sense than anything I was ever told." Then he asked gently, "Claire, do you believe that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah?" She nodded. "And that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his final messenger?" Claire hesitated only for a moment, and then nodded again. "I do." A few days later, in the same masjid she once walked into as a curious outsider, Claire stood at the front beside Ustaz Malik and Aldi. A few of the women who had gotten to know her over the past week gathered quietly behind her. With her right hand over her heart, and her eyes shimmering with tears, she repeated the words slowly. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." When she finished, there was silence. A peaceful, powerful silence. Then someone whispered, "Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest." Claire didn't cry immediately. She just stood there, eyes closed, heart steady, feeling, for the first time in her life, like she belonged. That evening, she didn't stay at the hotel. Instead, she walked through the rain-soaked alley with Aldi beside her, both of them wrapped in quiet thoughts. At Warung Yani, she sat down and whispered, "Aldi, today I was born again." Aldi looked at her, eyes soft. "You were always Claire. But now, your soul knows its name." Claire sat in her small hotel room after returning from the masjid, the Qur'an still in her lap. Her heart was calm, yet the silence around her buzzed with anticipation and fear. She had taken the Shahada that morning. She had whispered the words with clarity and conviction. But now, as night crept in and her phone buzzed with missed calls from France, reality pressed down on her like never before. She knew what this meant. She had not just changed her beliefs. She had crossed an invisible line, the one drawn by society, family, and the world she used to call home. And yet, she had never felt freer. The next morning, Aldi was already setting up buckets and hoses when Claire walked into the alley, her scarf gently resting on her head, wrapped with care. He looked up, a little startled. "You're early." Claire smiled. "I couldn't sleep. My soul is awake now." Aldi paused his work, wiping his hands on his shirt. "That's a beautiful way to say it." Claire stood beside him in the morning mist. "I haven't told my father yet." Aldi looked at her gently. "You don't have to do it all at once." "No," Claire said firmly. "I need to. Today." That afternoon, she sat on the hotel balcony with her phone in hand, staring at the numbers she knew by heart. Her fingers trembled as she hit dial. The line rang twice. Then came the deep, commanding voice of Nicholas Duval. "Claire." "Finally." "Papa," she said, voice calm but quiet. "I need to tell you something important." "Make it quick," he said. "Pierre is flying out tomorrow. I expect you to. I've accepted Islam." Silence. Not even breath on the other end. "I'm Muslim now, Papa," Claire continued, holding back tears. "And I've decided not to marry Pierre. I'm not coming back." When her father spoke again, his voice had changed. "You're out of your mind." "No," Claire said. "For the first time, I think I'm finally sane." "You're willing to throw away your inheritance, your future, your name, for what?" "A man who washes motorbikes. For a man who helped me find my soul." The call ended with a sentence Claire expected but still feared. "Then you are no longer my daughter." She sat in silence for a long while, letting those words sink in. Then, slowly, she placed her phone down and whispered to herself, "La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah." And that was enough. When she returned to the alley, Aldi saw her face and knew. "He disowned me," Claire said simply. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," she replied. "He gave me a name." But Allah gave me purpose. They sat side by side beneath the tarp as rain started to fall again, soft and steady. Claire, I have to ask something now. Something big. She looked up at him, surprised by the seriousness in his voice. You're Muslim now. You believe in Allah. And I want to be your halal partner. But only if your heart is ready. Claire didn't flinch. Yes, she said. But I want it to be simple. Pure. Just like the faith I've found. A few days later, in the same neighborhood that had once whispered about the strange foreign girl, people gathered, not for gossip, but for celebration. Claire and Aldi held their nikah ceremony at the masjid. There were no gold-trimmed dresses, no celebrity makeup artists, no drone cameras. Just a white scarf, a borrowed kabaya, a few jasmine flowers in her hair. A simple sarong and white shirt for Aldi. The Imam recited the verses. Witnesses nodded. Claire repeated her consent in calm, steady Indonesian she had practiced. I accept Aldi bin Rahmath as my husband, for the sake of Allah. A few soft Allahu Akbars echoed from the crowd. And when Aldi took her hand after the ceremony, it wasn't a romantic movie moment. It was something more real. More sacred. After the nikah, Claire sat beside Aldi under the same tarp where they had first shared tea. She looked at her wedding ring, simple silver, and smiled. Do you know what's funny? She said. What? I always thought love had to feel like fire. Like danger. But this feels like water. Like peace. Aldi chuckled. That's what faith is. It doesn't burn you. It washes you. That evening, after everyone had left, they cleaned up the chairs and stacked the dishes. Neighbors had brought trays of food. Children had drawn hearts in chalk outside the masjid. Claire was tired but glowing. Her hair slightly messy, her scarf slipping, but her smile unchanged. Aldi stood beside her, holding 2 cups of warm tea. Mrs. Claire Aldi, he said with a grin. Claire laughed. Sounds better than Claire Duval. He handed her the tea. What now? She looked up at the night sky. We walked together. One step at a time. On Allah's path. The morning sun peeked through the clouds as Claire and Aldi swept the front of their small shop. It had been nearly 2 months since their nikah. Their life was simple, no fancy cars, no designer clothes, no boardroom meetings, yet somehow, every day felt full. The shop they ran together was half motorbike wash, half humble coffee corner. Claire stood behind the counter, pouring hot kopi tubrik into chipped ceramic mugs. Aldi handled the motorbikes, his sleeves rolled up, hands still bearing the calluses of honest work. Locals often stopped by just to say salam to the Bil Muslima, as Claire was now affectionately known. She had adapted to the rhythm of Indonesian life like a river finding its course. She wore long cotton dresses and soft scarves, spoke basic Indonesian fluently, and smiled more freely than ever. But the real change was inside. Gone was the Claire who had once wandered through life with hollow luxury. The woman now sipping tea on a plastic stool beside Aldi had purpose, and peace. One slow afternoon, a journalist from a local Islamic magazine visited their shop. She had heard rumors about the Frenchwoman who accepted Islam and married a motorbike washer. Sitting across from Claire, the journalist asked softly, Why Islam? Claire didn't hesitate. Because it gave me back my soul, she said. It didn't promise me wealth. It gave me meaning. And Aldi? The journalist asked, glancing at the man gently drying a customer's motorbike under the sun. Claire smiled. He never asked me to change. He just reminded me who I really was. That weekend, Claire and Aldi visited a small Islamic school on the edge of Bandung where Aldi once studied before dropping out. Claire brought snacks, notebooks, and a quiet smile. She sat with the little girls, helping them color in their Arabic alphabet books. The children giggled when she tried to say, Aleph, with the right tone. Later, as the adhan rang softly from a nearby masjid, Claire closed her eyes. I used to think the call to prayer was just background noise in cities, she whispered to Aldi. But now it feels like Allah calling me home. Back at home, Aldi fixed a leaky faucet while Claire sorted donated clothes for a small charity initiative they had started with the neighbors. "You know," she said one evening, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here, married to a man who owns 3 buckets and a prayer mat, I would have laughed." "And now?" Aldi asked, grinning. "I still laugh. But now it's real," she replied. He paused. "Do you miss your old life?" Claire thought about it. "No," she said. "I miss nothing. Because in that world I had everything except Allah. And now I have Him and you. That's more than enough." One morning, as they sat under the shade of their tarp-covered stall, a young woman approached, nervous, wide-eyed, maybe 22 years old. Her name was Lena. She had watched Claire's short documentary that aired in France and had flown all the way to Bandung to find her. "I'm Catholic," Lena confessed. "But I've been feeling empty. And your story moved something in me." Claire invited her in, gave her coffee, and listened without judgment. They sat for over 2 hours, talking about faith, fear, and freedom. Before Lena left, she hugged Claire and said, "You've made me believe that it's okay to start over." Claire's eyes welled up. "We all start somewhere. Just make sure your journey is for Allah, not for anyone else." That night, Aldi and Claire sat on a bench in front of their shop, watching stars blink into the sky. A light breeze carried the scent of fried food and fresh soap. "You're quiet," Aldi said, sipping tea. Claire turned to him. "Do you think we'll always stay this small?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if the world starts noticing again? What if the media calls again? What if they try to pull us into something bigger?" Aldi smiled. "Then we remind ourselves why we're here. Not for fame. Not for attention. But to serve. To love. To worship." Claire nodded slowly. One prayer at a time. The next day, after far prayer, Claire sat in the corner of their small home, journaling by the window as golden light crept in. On the page she wrote, "I lost everything I was told mattered, wealth, status, family name. But I found everything I didn't know I needed, faith, love, and a man who bows with me in prayer. This world no longer scares me. Because I know where I stand, on the path of Allah, beside someone who reminds me to keep walking." Years later, people would still talk about them. Not because Claire was once rich. Not because Aldi was once poor. But because they proved that 2 hearts, when guided by Allah, can beat in harmony across continents, classes, and past lives. Love that begins with faith is not fragile. It doesn't demand perfection. It only demands truth. And in the quiet corner of Bandung, under a blue tarp, beside a shelf of Qur'ans and buckets of soap, truth lived every day, unpolished, undramatic, but deeply, beautifully real.